start with our next speaker. Our next speaker is a good friend of mine and a colleague who I've known ever since I've come to Marquette back in 2007 and had the chance and still are working together on various projects. In fact, she's going to talk to you about a project that I'm involved with that is very near and dear to our hearts as people who love culture and history in the city of Marquette. Tiina Morin is the Arts and Culture Manager for the City of Marquette. She has over 25 years experience connecting communities with arts and culture. In her current tenure with the City of Marquette, she facilitated the 10-year Arts and Culture Master Plan, established the city's first public art policy, and led the development and formation of the Upper Peninsula Arts and Culture Alliance and Evolve Marquette. In the past, she was an educator for the Marquette Regional History Center and for the Swedish American Museum Center of Chicago. And in Chicago, she also presented professional development courses to teachers and museum educators around the area. And she's had many, many more experiences at institutions like the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, Lynx Hall, Columbia College, and the University of Chicago, the Chicago Cultural Center, and DanceWorks in Milwaukee. She has a BA in Cultural Anthropology from Michigan State University, go Spartans, and has training in Estonian folk dance. You can talk about that with her another time. Contact improvisation, contemporary dance, and theater. She was elected to the Estonian American National Council in 2005, which she served for 3 years, and was a member of the Chicago Estonia House for 9 years, or 11 years. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the podium, Ms. Tiina Morin.
Hi, I was telling Dan that I was really nervous. You know, it's NMU presentation, and when I speak for people in the city, often, you know, not everyone is interested in history and the arts, and so it's very nice because you're a very interested crowd, and I think that's why I was a little nervous, because you're actually going to pay attention to the words I'm saying. I want to thank Dan for that nice introduction and asking me here to present. It's a privilege. I didn't know Dr. Sonderegger, but I knew his wife, Marion. And when I worked at the Regional History Center as a school program educator, I was able to do her oral history. And she talked about being a little girl in the summers in Marquette and cooling off on the large at McCarty's Cove in the ice house and those big blocks of ice when she was a little girl. And just, you know, thinking about all the people that we're talking about today that just lived and played and worked hard here in Marquette. It's so interesting. So I'm here to discuss the city's Cultural Trail project. And, you know, basically it's a 7-mile interpretive public art trail spanning the 7 miles on the multi-use pathway from the Carp River Kiln, which I am more excited about than I have been, thanks to that presentation. Just that fits so well, because that's where it starts, to Presque Isle. And I'm going to share today why this project developed, why we think we need this trail, what's been accomplished, and what's coming up. I'm not a historian. I'm not a city planner. But I'm an arts administrator, and I have, like you said, a career in dance and museums. But I have developed a lot of cultural programs for communities and connecting communities through culture, and that I'm very passionate about. It's passion work, and I don't know what else to call it, to be here in the UP, and very similar to Dan. My mother and my grandparents emigrated from Estonia, went to Germany and then to the U.S., but met a guy from Marquette in World War II that helped them, and his family sponsored them, so they came to Nagani in the 50s. And they kind of created a little Estonia there. And actually, when you're talking, I lived there for about 10 years, and my dad had said there was some kilns or potential charcoal kilns, and this is Old 480 Road and Yarvie Road. And I did find a large metal door, so I have pictures. I'll have to show you those pictures, but that was really interesting to me. And then my grandfather, a French-Canadian miner who came to Gwyn with his family, and they spoke French. So I'm here in the UP because of that passion for culture and wanting to be a part of it and preserving it. So cultural trail. Before I talk about the cultural trail, I think it's important for you to know who's leading this project and why we're leading it. So, it's tripped here. Let's see. I know, yeah, I have to escape out of this. Oh, I got it. I think she was gonna come help me. I do that, and then I do, there we go. So I'm a part of a department called Community Services with the city. We basically are made up of 3 divisions: Parks and Recreation, Senior Services, and Arts and Culture. Arts and Culture has been an office or a department at one point of the city for over 20 years. I think it's pretty unique that we have a little town that actually invests in arts and culture. And we have a 3-person office, me and Amelia Pruitt and Tristan Luama, good Finnish name from Marquette. And we work in the lower level of the Peter White Public Library. There's a gallery there. If you're ever there, please stop and see me if you want to talk about this project. We lease from the library. Our 20-year lease is was up. We signed a 5-year lease that we're now 3 years into. So we're not affiliated with the library, but we love renting from them. Beats that City Hall building, which I'd rather not be in. That was funny too. I really liked that. I'm advised by an Arts and Culture Advisory Committee of really interesting and creative folks in Marquette. John Teichman actually works here at Northern in admissions. Fun. I have a fun job. And we're guided by a master plan. When I started with the city, for those of you that have been around for a while, there was a lot of programming at the Arts and Culture Center. A lot of classes, youth theater, a lot of programming focus. We went through a master plan and asked the community what they believe their tax dollars should be used for with arts and culture. And it was advocacy. It was growing our local creative economy and supporting this vibrant arts and culture community. And we're doing that in many, many ways, but this master plan is our guide. And I believe very, very important that the city is invested in preserving and supporting arts and culture. And our impact is many. We placemaking and development. If you've heard of First Thursdays, we do that. The mural on 3rd, we helped to make that happen and find the grant funding to make that mural happen. Our first big public art commission was on Hurley Park basketball court. That's a project of ours. Economic, education, tourism. We have our hands in a lot of different projects. And currently an economic impact study on nonprofit arts and culture organizations. I thought I'd look at my notes, and I'm not. Better start looking. We also manage, I have to say, that space downstairs with all these projects, but we also manage the Dio Gallery, and it's named after Jack and Cindy Dio, who are here, who are involved in Art on the Rocks. And that's all about our history, too, right? And our culture, all of these things that we do together. These festivals. So we're really a hub of creativity, a lot of civic engagement and education, partnership and collaboration. One of our partnerships right now is with City Band, working on getting a new band shell. We've talked about preserving that band shell, but I also think that some acoustics issues with that band shell. It needs to be a little bit bigger. So that's going to be a great partnership. And economic development. Heritage and arts is economic development. It just is. People are here because this is an interesting place filled with history and art. That's why I'm here, and that's why people are here. So we are very tied. And I agree with the last speaker that Dan's introduction I was writing everything down and realized it was being filmed. I'm like, okay, I can go back. But that's true. Everything that Dan said, was so poignant about how we're tied with economic development and heritage. And so the biggest, and I think one of the most special projects to my heart, is this cultural trail. Raise of hands, how many people have heard about this concept of a cultural trail? Yeah, we're getting the word out. That's good. Cultural trail. And the cultural trail embodies all of those cornerstones that I mentioned. It is education, it is economic, and it is community engagement and partnership, because I will not be writing that verbiage, that narrative for the cultural trail, but all the partners that we have to work with to make this happen. One of the biggest one is the Keweenaw Bay Indian community. That partnership with the tribe is pivotal to make this trail happen. Beaumere Heritage Center, Marquette Regional History Center, Native American Studies, Marquette Maritime Museum, all of these very, very important partners, and we'll be helping to lead this project. So a little bit about that trail. By definition of a cultural trail is a bike or pedestrian path relating to culture and heritage, connecting resources, landmarks. The Iron Ore Heritage Trail is a very good example of a very successful cultural trail. The Iron Ore Heritage Trail is partnering with us as well. Carol Fulsher is on the committee, because all those paths in the city intersect. The North Country Trail, the Iron Bell Trail, Iron Ore Heritage, and the city's multi-use pathway. But this is where it began. This is the history and the background of the trail, which I feel is really, really important. And it's really a nice example of what Dan was talking about with that vanishing, what was it, opportunity, but the vanishing, I forget how you said it. I wrote it down, the vanishing history, right? Almost, it didn't vanish, but it was being forgotten. So I got pulled into this Father Marquette restoration accessibility project my second year living here. And this is, at the time, was our really only significant, and still is, piece of public artwork in our community. It's a bronze statue of Father Jacques Marquette, named for our city's namesake. And all of you probably all know this. The sculptor, Gaetano Trentinove, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, is an Italian sculptor. This was cast in bronze in Italy. And there are 3 of them. One is at Mackinac Island, and one is at Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C., that was given to Statuary Hall by Wisconsin. That one is in marble. This one is in bronze, and this is the only one with those reliefs on the pedestal there. So it is very special. And he was the Buzz Aldrin. I like to think of him. I was like, why Father Marquette? And maybe it was Dan. Like, he was a big deal. Like, he was a big deal at that time and significant. So a lot of explorers and the missionaries that did exploring work, you'll see statues of them, honoring them. And so it's significant. And I got a call from my boss, Carl Zuger. He was the director of community services at the time. He hired me. He's now, he passed away 4 years ago, I believe now. And he said, God, beautification is on me. We got to do something about this statue. Beautification Preservation Committee, Barb Kelly and Emily Lewis said, the statue is falling apart. And this is an amazing group of women, and they get stuff done. Like, when they're involved, action is going to happen. And that was my first introduction to that group. And they said, why doesn't the city take care of what it owns? This is a beautiful piece of public art, a historic park, and is it even insured? How do you maintain it? It's in disarray. There's parts broken off, pieces broken off the relief. And they were right. And it was a big aha moment for the city that we have to preserve this. So that started in 2013. From 2013 to 18 was a long process of developing, and we're still not done with this park, but developing this park. So there was a passport grant, DNR passport grant, And Iron Ore Heritage Trail contributed significantly, I think about $30,000. And what happened was there was a restoration of the statue, right? Which I'm gonna, let me see, show in this picture. Oh. Restoration of the statue and the reliefs. Public art. We didn't have a public art policy yet, so I was kind of winging it. But we had a lot of community. We put it out, a request for proposals. We had a lot of local people suggest they wanted to do the entrance. We chose an artist for the benches in the entrance that symbolizes Father Jacques Marquette's canoe. And inside it has the journey, the kind of the path of his journey. And that was done by Ryan Bryak. He's from Escanaba originally, and he's an artist and architect here in Marquette. And the benches are made from Kona dolomite, which I think is really interesting, and that was harvested locally. And then also we had accessibility was a big part of that project. So there's that switchback. You got to walk a long way up that hill, right? But that was better than getting into the rock or putting a big ramp into the beautiful cobblestone pass. And some people I've watched people walk this pathway to the statue, and they're like, "Why does this pathway lead to nowhere?" I'm like, it leads to the statue, not to nowhere. And the whole point was so people could get to the statue to look at it. So it does stop, and they're like, "Where does this go?" I'm like, "Right there." So we're getting there. So now we have this beautiful park. The plantings and the native plantings around the landscaping too, that was a part of it. They're getting ignored. You know, the weeds have seeded. We have missed the boat. We need to invest in that hillside and the plantings. It was native plantings, but I think we don't have a lot of staff at the city to take care of this. So the resources for managing this are hard to come by. But there are 2 beautiful flower bed gardens above that are maintained by the beautification committee, and they're gorgeous. So yeah, 2013 to 2018. I'm looking at my watch. I got to talk faster. So I'm up there. This is where I almost have to show. I'm up there, and I am just like, I'm all passionate. I'm all excited about history and everything, and I'm like, look at this view. This is going to be a respite for people. They're going to come sit on these benches, and that was the view right there. And this is 2016, I think, is the day that I was standing up there, and I'm like, the Hampton Hotel really bums me out, but at least we have the rest of the view. And Carl Zuger looks at me and says, "Tiina, you don't go to planning meetings." I'm like, "No, what's going on?" And he's like, "That won't be there, so you need to change and start looking inward instead of outward, because we're going to have Marquette one place, the next one, the condos." I'm like, "Well, where's the view going to be?" I'll show you in a second. And from the History Center and from around town in the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, I remember these pictures of the industrial port, right? The coal, the tanks, the working ore dock, the dirt, the stories from the oral histories I collected. And, the comparison, like, look at the forward thinkers in Marquette and all the community groups and city officials had to do in the 70s and 80s and 90s to make that beautiful green space and to clean that up. And so the idea that, it's getting covered up again, we just got it uncovered and cleaned up, was very distressing to me. And I think the last presenter talked about the lost opportunity. I'm like, we're going to have a lost opportunity here to talk about this. So it was very distressing, and that's when I started thinking about what are the stories we tell within the city. Why Father Marquette? What are the other stories that are untold? What are the stories we tell on the lakeshore? And all of the big pieces that were missing. Dan also mentioned it with the barn that was coming down. Then there's that reverse of development, like, what are we losing if we do develop and build things? There's something that we lose there too. They work together, preserving our heritage, but also preserving our natural shoreline. and our viewscape, I think is really important. When you work with kids in history, and I've always worked with kids in history museums and talking about artifacts and history, you're always saying, and I got sick of saying it, imagine no cars, imagine no telephone lines, imagine. I'm tired of saying imagine. And I found out, we're going to have to say, imagine what it was like. And that really struck me. So positive things is we have over 90% of our shoreline that we have access to. There's a lot of things, when I think about our community, there's a lot of things people can complain about, but I am pretty impressed with what the city has accomplished. Protecting the shoreline, expanding public access, removal of 2 coal power plants, and even the road relocation from McCarty's Cove to Presque Isle is huge. So very fortunate. And if we're developing densely, I think that's fine, but we even have a new pier going in, or it's in now. So a lot of opportunities. So where do we go from here in 2018? Research. So this is that's the view. That's your view up there now. You can look at the ore dock, or you can turn, and that's your remaining view. And if you see that rock right there, there are 2, those gardens are a name for 2 people. The 2 people that started those gardens are no longer with us. Tammy Diadowski was on the beautification committee, younger than me, passed away, and she was a part of making this. She didn't live to see the red ribbon cutting. Carl Zuger, my mentor, who hired me, Mr. Parks and Recreation, if you knew him, he was a big strapping guy. He developed ALS when we were working on the project. So the accessibility project that was so important to him, he had no idea at the red ribbon cutting, he'd be taking a wheelchair up that very same switchback. And what was really amazing about Carl when you're faced with terminal illness is that Mr. Parks and Recreation became all about the arts and culture. Just everything shifted for him, and it was about legacy, and it was about history. And he said to me, Tiina, you've got to fight to protect our shoreline and our history and the arts. That's pretty powerful, coming from someone that knows he doesn't have much time. And he wrote this, and he wrote it on one of those machines, he could no longer speak. So I'm just trying to let you know how significant this little rock is. And it says the Carl G. Zuger Overlook. He said, this is a gateway, a place to pause in life and reflect and meditate. It is a place where aged eyes see the past and the imaginative child sees the future. It's a portal which connects nature and the community souls. In fact, it's really the location where it all began. And so I thought that was a nice sentiment for that overlook. So then I go start researching, and I talk to Dan, and I talk to the History Center, and I talk to Superior Watershed Partnership, and I ask, what do you want out of a cultural trail? What would that mean to you if we had an interpretive trail along the shoreline? Most cities have to build a multi-use pathway, millions of dollars. We have the pathway. Holly Greer had that vision, the first woman mayor. And we've got to tell the indigenous history. Basically, it is untold outside of museum walls. There's no interpretation. And the immigrant history. But the thing that really struck me talking to Dr. Martin Reinhardt, who's a treasurer at this university, he said to me, he's been my education and gives me the books to read. Now you've got to learn about this. He's been really wonderful. He said, Tiina, where's the center of community for you? I'm like, well, my grandfather's farm out in Nagani that I just sold. No, but where is it in Marquette for you? And I'm like, I have no idea. Is it Matson? I'm like, well, that's a nice park to go to do things. I don't know. He says, I don't think a lot of people can tell you where the center of our community is. Do we need to recenter? And he talks a lot about recentering and the Ojibwa, the central fire, and how that fire, that first stone, was the center of the community. But how through time, and it's okay, the center of our community changes, and it will continue to change. But maybe he was right, with all of the divisiveness. All of this actually is the Redmond stuff is starting to crop up with the high school and the mascot issues. Divisiveness, climate change, people getting anxious about development. Where is our center? And maybe this is an opportunity for a community conversation about where our center is. So clicked out of it for a second. So we did research, and NMU is a wonderful resource in our community. The urban geography class, papers here, did a research project. We've got students that are hungry to do research. They researched the economic benefits of cultural trails, and they talked to Indianapolis and all these communities that have them, and boy, it was big. Once those trails went in, business went up, because you're branding your community with heritage and history and showing people where to go and where to experience things. So Urban Geography did a great job, and they actually presented to Parks and Recreation, who included it in their master plan. And then Native American Community Engagement class, under Dr. Martin Reinhardt's mentorship, they did a study, and Dr. Manyagi is cited all throughout that study. That's what's the nice thing about a small community, is you get to meet the people that are doing this original research. And really, it was all of them, but especially the students that did the study of the Anishinaabe impact and shared Dr. Manyagi's research to me, that made us realize what this trail maybe needed to be. So they brought out the Hinsdale map, which showed 6 villages, or 6 places, summer camps, villages, where the Anishinaabe lived here in Marquette. And for a non-historian, I don't consider myself a historian, this was really enlightening, because all of those little triangles, the red triangles, are at places that we all naturally go to, right? Lighthouse, Presque Isle, that what we call Founder's Landing. I don't know who decided to call it that, but that Founder's Landing area, Matson Park area, Carp River, all of those areas are areas where people are naturally drawn and industry is drawn. And it's because of that lake and because of what the lake produced for us. So there's cultural trail sites, and I have to say this is a draft. Every week this is changing, and once the committee starts meeting regularly, it's going to change a lot too. But we had to decide, in order to get grant funding, on some locations. To give you're going to ask $100,000 from the National Endowment for the Arts, you better know where you're going to place those signs. It's pretty serious business. So the yellow dots reflect where some of this interpretive signage is going to go, and I'm going to go through each one. All of this is going to have to, I'm going through KBIC, I'm working with their Natural Resources Department, working with Native Studies, Dan, the History Center, because if we move any of these sites, there's a long process with the grant funding we received to get permission to move the sites that we've said we're going to put interpretive signage. It's a very lengthy process. But this was the most significant one, which, again, today was perfect timing. The mouth of the Carp River, home to the largest and one of the largest villages. Would it be in the UP, Russ? Would that be safe to say, in the UP? Or on the shoreline? On the shoreline. And it's the mouth of the Carp River. And I believe there's one further with the Chocolate River, but this is the one. We'll do 5 here on the Cultural Trail. And Gitchinamizibing, mouth of the Carp River, is also the location of a very large garden where the prison now stands, and a quarry. And now our wastewater plant, still a really important place for fishing. And the name translates to suckerfish, the great suckerfish. And I think of these people fishing here in the summer and gardening, and I didn't know this. And I'm sure most people that go to see that kiln don't know this. And it's not about getting rid of the kiln, right? It's about all of these stories. They all count. And I think it's really interesting that this location where Dan is standing, perfect person to hang out with at these types of places, that's the place where we would like to put the interpretive site to tell that story of that village. And it's diagonal from the beehive kiln, which I think is very interesting as well. And right when you're spending more time there, right when we activate that site, what happens is you start looking at, oh, look at the wastewater treatment plant. Wow, why is that big pipe there? It's so unsightly. They didn't place it under the bridge, the big pipe. It's right there for everyone to see. It's gonna, I think, get other projects are gonna start happening to beautify that area. So that's one. Another interpretive site is that the rocks, the Whetstone Brook was another important fishing site. And we're looking, Dan's kind of looking to the south. And there's a nice flat area where the bike path turns around that would be a nice interpretive area because you can see the ore dock, you can see the area of a village site, and an important fishing site where I believe they did net fishing, which I think you talked about. The new pier project. That's in progress. I haven't taken a picture of it, what it looks like now, but so that was a concept drawing. So here's my vision for the new pier. You can tell the city planners what you think, but some people want to name it a person's name. I won't say what name is being suggested. I really highly suggest we don't name it a person's name. Naming has a lot of power, and it would be nice to go somewhere where it really is about all of us, even if it's a word. We have talked about this for a land acknowledgement. When I asked KBIC, where do we put the land acknowledgement? And they said in the most high trafficked area you possibly can, so people actually read it. So this is a potential site. If we name it of a local person, potential business person's name, that's not going to happen. At what point, I think this could be really a great opportunity, potential center community opportunity, not sure, but these are things we shouldn't move fast on. We should really consider. A lot of consideration, a lot of transparency, and a lot of talking. Matson Park. Wow, the fishing. Fish, the whole shoreline. And they just did a study up at Tech with KBIC, and fish was like the predominant word that came up when they talked about their culture. They're a fishing people. And I'm thinking that word's gonna keep coming up for us too. Fish and the lake. And you think of all of the fishing, Phil's Fish House, and all the fishing that went on in that Matson Harbor, the fish shacks that were there. So I don't know if that's a final place, but it's a nice flat place. And you can get to it, and bikers aren't all around you, and so I proposed that, but again, these aren't final. Lighthouse Park, also at the foot of Ridge, was in Ojibwa. There's pictures of wigwams if you go to the History Center there. Snagging Point, another fishing spot. Also an important maritime point. The city also now has a new city park there called Lighthouse Park with an Airbnb that you can rent. This was one site, and again, we'll have to work with the Maritime Museum and the community. That would be a very nice site because, again, there's a view. You're not looking at anything built, you're looking at the view. It could be a very nice interpretive site. And then I'll go a little faster. Shiras Park, the new, some of the areas along the new shoreline with the, between Picnic Rocks and Presque Isle. This is an area, so by the Dead River was another important site, rich with blueberries, the mouth of the Dead River. And this is close, there's a parking lot there. I think this could be a potential site as well, where people could drive in. And then of course, Presque Isle Park, our gem. There's a lot of history out there. Lead Metal Point, is it Lead Metal Point? I think that might be the name. And that needs to be interpreted as well. I think that when we interpret these places, it's going to, people get more empathetic with something that they know, and they'll be more likely to protect it if they know that this is an ancient place. There was a neat sign when I was in Vancouver, Washington, on vacation. I'd never been out west, never been west of Minnesota, and I went there last year. And they would, in their parks, would say, "You are walking on ancient paths. Please be careful." And boy, did it change how you walked around. So our first funder, Native American Heritage Fund in Michigan, gave us $57,000. They want curriculum. They want K through 12 curriculum, place-based education where school groups can come to these places and learn and do real-time learning. This is Martin Reinhardt, Dr. Martin Reinhardt, talking about the village that was there during Art Week. The next funder came this year, and we actually just officially got access to the funds in August. It was a long process. The National Endowment for the Arts, Our Town grant. Under 50 communities got this grant. Over 400 applied. You have to write a perfect grant. We didn't get it the first year. And I'll tell you why. We didn't get it the first year because we said if we got it, we would engage the tribes. The second time, we engaged first, and then they liked that idea. Now we have a relationship. The other big reason that we got it was this road relocation. That's a concept drawing of the road relocation. It's hard to visualize it sometimes, but in 50 years, for the first time, you won't have to walk on boulders and you'll have access. We can't have heritage tourism if we can't take care of our shoreline and have places for them to go. People won't come here if it's not pristine and beautiful. So this project was pivotal, and I think one of the reasons our National Endowment gave it, they saw that we had skin in the game and we're protecting our shoreline. And you can see Superior Watershed crew, their Climate Corps crew planting beach grass. That's the rock, how it kind of looks now. And here's your concept drawing. So you'll be able to bike all the way from the Carp River, all along the shoreline, and walk right in. This is what an interpretive trail might look like, right? So you'll have public art, interpretive signage, and to be really careful not to clutter. We don't want to do that either. Here's another access point. So people are going to also have these walkways. So the trail won't lead just along the shoreline. It'll lead you to the water, which I think is really important. So I know I'm running out of time. I have 10 more minutes.
Yeah, we want some questions too.
So it's an art grant that we received, and I'm an art person. I don't want plywood signs with just information, right? These signs should be made to inspire. So we need to be really creative. What are the materials that are made of? How do we incorporate aesthetics and art to really draw people? And so here's some examples from communities around the United States that are doing really cool things with interpretive signage. I love that settings where you put the actual thing that you're interpreting with the lighthouse here. I think that's interesting. This gets more artful, but again, you're going to take a beeline over here and pay attention. And how art, the drawing, the artists that we hire, can actually, the art then has meaning too. And I think also tells a story. This will be really important, I think, when we talk about Ojibwa heritage. Poetry. You know, reading Robert Frost along the shoreline, that's a lot different than maybe just reading years and dates, which are important too, dates and, but poetry should be integrated. And then of course signage. This trail though, it's not just the shoreline, it's leading people to the resources to learn more. So shouldn't the Beaumere have a cultural trail stop? The History Center, the Maritime Museum, what are the other places? The library, that these are places to learn more information. So the cultural trail really serves as an invitation. Indigenous art is one of the next big public art commissions. And it really is balancing that Father Marquette statue. We need Indigenous art in this community, so that's the next project by an Anishinaabe woman maker. And these are examples of Indigenous art in the US. The middle one's actually by an Ojibwa artist who belongs to KBIC. He works downstate, and he works in stone, and he goes, that's not what we would ever work in, but I want it to last, or art to last. Here's a great example of when you don't have an Anishinaabe person making the work that represents them. The original sign, which is in studio, we might hang it up in the pavilion. There's been a couple signs, but the sign on the left here, the canoe is wrong. You know, it was inside out. You put the white on the inside, the outside of the bark on the inside. And then you have a vision. It's a really beautiful painting, but of a very stoic Indian. So you've got some stereotypes working here, and no fault of the artist. Heart was in the right place. He did an excellent job. Lots of people got their picture taken in front of the sign. Very sentimental to the community, but it wasn't accurate. So we hired, we had a call to artists. We worked with Native Studies, and Sherry Aldred Loonsfoot applied. Her depiction's very different. The canoe is correct. It's her just vision of Lake Superior, and it's a woman, and she's picking berries, or going along the shoreline. And there's macaques with berries. And this is the original painting in City Hall. It's just a different feeling. And she spoke at Art Week. Outreach is a big part of the trail, so we do a program called Art Week. And that's not just a fun time with a lot of art. It's about engaging community with issues that matter through art, using art as an engagement tool. So we had all kinds of conversations along the shoreline, and Dan was a part of that. Sherry, who painted the sign, was a part of that. Dr. Martin Reinhardt, asking people what they thought and what their memories were. Here are some of the images from Art Week. Next year, the theme is home. We received $20,000 from the Michigan Arts and Culture Council. Housing is going to come up with art, wanting to engage people about home and what is home to you. There'll be a lot of different, be interesting different perspectives. We had a sunrise poem at Art Week where Dr. Reinhardt and his daughter, Bidaban Reinhardt, wrote a poem. And very different from Carl's view at the Rock about this is where it all started and dreaming of a new life, right? And this one's about ancestors and spirit lines and connecting to the land. So again, new perspectives. So there we are now. It's cool. It's different. So stay with me. This is what I want. City manager thinks it might be a good idea. This is what I think is a good idea. I think. I don't know what you're going to think. I think. And I'm trying to tell the story so you can go and tell your people, get involved in the community master plan, what you think. This is city-owned building. I say it's a cultural center. I say that we make it beautiful. And we make that entrance to our city about heritage, about culture, about art. A friend did this. We didn't pay for this to get done. But this is an example of what it could look like. What if we really reimagine that entrance to our city? Right now, it's interesting, because people don't often work, sometimes it's hard to get everyone to work together. We have 3 different parks on the deed. We have Lakeside Park, we have Lions Park, and we have Father Marquette Park. It's one place. And we kind of need to address that, I think, but what if it was one place? What if this was your urban trailhead coming into town, and we tell you, this is your pathway. This is our community. Maybe it's solar. Maybe it's an example of how you can live off the grid, and you can learn about climate change and history and the resources in our community. And when people come, you invite them to be good stewards of this community and be good residents, and how they can get involved. That's my vision. Well, see, I did apply for a grant for this, an MEDC grant for $600,000 for this in the band shell. I thought it was interesting. They did give it to private business owners. 3.9 million went to the ORDOC. Great couple. They're doing great things. That money needed to redo that building. But I think, again, where we think about putting money in this community, especially tax dollars, do we do it with public investment that's open to all, or we do it to private investment for that quick fix? This is kind of a long haul vision for economy, and looking at other grants right now, and I'm hoping to find people that will share this vision with me. So I guess it's questions time. I didn't give you much time. But
Fantastic, absolutely. I'm on board. All right, Russ, you have a question.
this is the scary part. Russ can ask a question.
No, it's not so much a question, it's just an addition. I would point out at the Father Marquette Park, that rock that's there, that's several billion years old, and it is what is at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Okay? So
That's a blow me away fact.
Yeah. The other thing is that at the Carp River, okay, and where the prison is, that was the beginning of an Indian trail that took Native Americans down to Escanaba and was eventually developed as a road so you could escape from Marquette during the winter when everything was frozen. That'd be addition. The other thing is that Gaines Rock that is along that trail, Gaines was a African-American family, and you might look into some funding for a marker from some African-American
That's a great idea.
organization to highlight that, because there's nothing in Marquette, as you had with Native Americans,
Right, that speaks
really
to
that
that.
highlights African Americans. There weren't that many, but they were here and did play quite a role in the community. So just some ideas.
That's wonderful.
Thanks, Russ. Just a second here. Charles? Oops, sorry. Here you go, Charles.
I want to mess up your plans. I want Father Marquette to return to where Father Marquette originated in Marquette, Michigan.
In which park?
Well, it's not in Father Marquette
No,
Park.
I didn't hear what you said.
I want him returned to his original position in Marquette City.
Oh, by where the Maritime Museum is, in that area.
That's right.
You know, the beautification had quite a lively discussion. It got very contentious between members of the beautification when they were raising the money for this, because some people felt it should be moved to their original site. But you'll have to call them about that, or a city commission meeting. But that's interesting. I've heard that. There's other people that would agree with you.
Any other questions or comments, thoughts? Oh, up here.
Tiina, is there any thought about one of the places on the trail being that center of community or being a connection to the center?
You know, I think that the committee made up of the stakeholders I mentioned are going to discuss that. And I think there's got to be a lot of community outreach to discuss that. There is an idea for a central fire. And KBIC is very interested in that as well. And that's for everybody, right? Does that go at Matson Park? I'm not sure. And people have been talking in Marquette. It would be nice to have a fire in our community that we can gather, if it's midsummer or any kind of community gathering. So that's in discussion. Or along that new road relocation. I mean, that's a $1 million project. I should say that road relocation, that funding was written by Superior Watershed Partnership. That really, I don't think gets enough credit when it comes to the funding that they're bringing in to do projects like that. But there's a whole area there, too, that's really away from forests and trees that bringing us back to the water that could be done in that whole coastal resiliency project, maybe. I don't know. I think it's going to change. Maybe we have to live with the trail for a while before we decide where it goes.
Paul?
Thanks. I liked what you said about defining or talking about the center of a community. And I think that would, I live on the Gogebic Range, and I think that that would be a great start for a discussion of our heritage. And we could have focus groups starting with that. And I also liked what you said about how that can change. But that's a great concept to start with. What is the center of your community?
I like that too. And I would also encourage you, maybe if I can figure out a way, if you guys contact me, I can get your emails. But the city is undergoing, they just hired a consultant to do a new community master plan. And this should be a conversation when they're doing outreach with the community. So I encourage you to get involved in the community master plan. If you think the city needs to move more with heritage tourism, or think about that where the center of the community is, I think those could be a good place to have those discussions. Yes.
Yes, Tina, I'm reluctant to bring this up, but Fred Reedholm used to always say that the statue of Father Marquette's sculptor was faced with a problem because nobody knew what Father Marquette looked like.
The whole Peter White thing, hey?
The whole Peter White thing, and it, for those of you who haven't noticed, take a look at the statue's face. Thank you.
Yeah, but then you know, the same artist, that nice marble bust of Peter White. Can you imagine how, I want a marble bust of myself. Please do that, That's interesting. But that's in the library, that marble bust. And so I don't know if I think they look alike, but people say that. That's interesting. But he did commission it, so could be.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for your comments and questions. Tina, fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I didn't even look at my notes.
All right, we're going to take a break for a few minutes and get ready for our next speaker. We'll start at